up, y'all? Welcome back. Thank you for tuning into another video. That intro was actually a tease because that is not what I'm making for this video. Well, the bean salad wasn't included in this week, but I am doing the chickpea and eggplant curry again, so don't be too upset with me. I wanted to do a quick overview of this week's meal because I was pretty excited about what I created. I had a suggestion to make cabbage soup, which I've never made cabbage soup before, so I had to look up a quick recipe that included tomatoes, which I was a little bit weirded out about, but you know, to each his own. I might as well try it. And then I included a spaghetti squash with some mushrooms and broccoli. But of course, you'll see everything that I make in the sped up process. Make sure you wash your chickpeas after you get them out the can to get rid of the metals and any extra sodium. And then I pop that in my curry pot, which I had already started the seasonings and the onions. Usually I just do the oils, the seasonings, and the onions and let that boil first. I put the coconut milk and then I start adding the chickpeas and the eggplant because chickpeas just need a little bit to cook since they're already in the can. And then eggplant really does not need that long to cook, so I don't want to overdo it because I also wanted to mention that when I'm thinking about cooking and meal planning for people, I also have to think about the fact that they will be reheating this food, and every time you reheat something, it takes away some of the nutritional value. So I definitely don't want to overcook anything. When it comes to vegetables or anything that's not meat, that doesn't have to be cooked to a certain degree, then I won't cook it vigorously just because it is edible with just a little bit of, you know, heat or simmering or sauteing. Eggplant is also already pretty delicate, so that's why I put it in last when I'm doing my curry process. So this is just me cutting up a few vegetables for the cabbage soup. I wanted to do carrot shreds because when I think of cabbage soup, I already think that the cabbage is going to be kind of a mouthful. And I don't want this to be a soup that's overwhelming with crunch. It's a soup. So I was like, what's the easiest way that you can put carrots in a soup and it is the thinnest way possible? And I couldn't shave the carrots after a certain point because they got too skinny. So what I did is I was innovative and I cut them up so that I can have them for a snack later in the week. We're panning over to check on the curry. This is when it's a good time to add in my eggplant. Really sauce it up, make sure that all the eggplants are nice and covered. So I want the eggplant to absorb the curry. I'll probably leave it simmering for about 10 to 15 minutes before I cut the fire off and let it just sit and cool. We'll switch back over to the cabbage to remind y'all to wash your fruits and vegetables thoroughly. So way earlier when I got home, before I started the video, I actually put some spaghetti squash in the oven to soften it up. And that's another thing about cooking. You really have to be strategic and know how long each food is going to take to cook and prep so that your food is aligning while it's cooking and nothing is going cold while it should be prepped and waiting on another food to finish cooking. For example, I knew the spaghetti squash was going to take 45 minutes in the oven. That's why I put it in there first, and then I can go ahead and cut my vegetables while that's cooking. And I know that I'm going to pair it with mushrooms, and that doesn't take long to cook, so I already started on another dish so that all of my dishes can be complete at a certain time and I'm not like waiting on one dish because I forgot that it's going to take 45 extra minutes. You feel what I'm saying? So another example, I knew that the spaghetti squash needed a minute to cool before I open it up and scrape it out, so I went ahead and took a few minutes to make some homemade granola. I've mentioned this in my previous videos. This is a staple for like the week. I love to put it with my chia seed pudding and yogurt, and I like to make it at home because it's just easier. We have a ton of oats, rolled oats, organic of course, and we have a bunch of nuts and things that go in granola, so might as well just make a big batch of our own. So all the different types of nuts and seeds that you like, and then I like to add a little bit of agave drizzle on top, pop it in the oven for maybe like 20-30 minutes or to your liking, and then package it and have it for the week. So my bok choy was sitting pretty after being cleaned. I figured go ahead and cut it up and start my cabbage soup. I also love bok choy, especially the big ones, because I feel like that's a perfect serving size for the week or for one dish. And then if you like to portion, you can do the baby bok choy and it would be like a really good serving. And my thought process for the cabbage soup is that I wanted the cabbage pieces to be really, really tiny because again, it is a soup, so you shouldn't be eating your soup, and I just wanted it to be easily consumed. And let me actually reiterate, I do like a chunky soup sometimes. Like, don't get me wrong, like some soup with rice in it. I don't know if y'all are cultured enough to know what I mean. My Latinas know my mama be putting rice in soup sometimes, and that shit is busting. So like, I mean, this I feel like is one of those soups that you don't eat, but I do be eating soup sometimes. Anyways, I went ahead and add the rest of my vegetables and popped that on the stove. And I mentioned earlier I would show y'all this process. The recipe called for diced tomatoes. I never would have thought to put tomatoes in cabbage soup. I don't know, it feels a little weird to me, but I went by the recipe. And you can't knock it until you try it. It still looked colorful, and I know it had good ingredients in it, as in for your body. So I have faith in it. Moving on to the next meal, I did spaghetti squash with mushrooms and broccoli. So this is me just cutting up the broccoli in relatively smaller pieces. And please go ahead and chop up the stems and eat those too. It's still broccoli. It just don't got the pretty leaves on it. We do not like to be wasters here, especially with food. Come on now. And again, reminder to clean your fruits and vegetables. There are a few brown spots that I would just went ahead and cut off, but I wanted to make sure to break it down first so that I'm getting in between the little branches. So child, the spaghetti squash is a whole nother battle, because I was cutting it and I was like, something seems wrong. I've made spaghetti squash before, but I don't remember it doing all this. And my mom wanted to tell me that I was supposed to cut it in half before I put it in the oven so I can scrape the seeds out. Girl, I promise I have made spaghetti squash before, but it had been so long and I really could not cut it in half. Like with all my strength and all my might, I really tried. I could not. So I was just like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I just did it a little out of order, but it still works out in my favor because I was taking the seeds out and the middle part still separated pretty well. Because the spaghetti part of the squash, you really have to like scrape out. So that's why I wasn't super worried about that. Also, pro tip, do better than me. In this case, I guess the spaghetti squash really wasn't my forte this time, but don't cook it for that full 45 minutes because you are also going to put it back on the pan to cook with the broccoli and the mushrooms. It still won't take that long because broccoli and mushrooms don't take that long to cook, but especially if you want your broccoli to be a little bit softer, then they're gonna be on the stove. So you're still gonna be cooking that spaghetti squash. Again, you don't want to overcook anything. So I added the broccolis first and give it a little saute because again, the broccoli is gonna take a little bit longer to cook than the mushrooms just because I want it to be kind of soft. I also added some lemon juice. I added some sesame oil and whatever seasonings you please. I was trying to do like an Asian taste to it. Kind of like a fried rice, but it's spaghetti squash. I also added a little bit of vegetable broth to give it some movement. Pro tip, I'll tag the creator that does this, but she has a cookbook out that doesn't use any oil, and one of the things that she uses instead is vegetable broth, or you can use butter or just plain water for some dishes, of course. But she does a really good job of eliminating oil if it's too much in your diet. So this is me adding the mushrooms. I probably could have chopped them up a little bit before, but mushrooms also shrink a little bit when you cook them. So that's what I was thinking about when I was making this. And shout out to the cast iron pan for taking this mouthful. I know I kind of stuffed the pan, but this is one of the only pans that was available at the point. Once upon a time, we used to have this big, gigantic fried rice pan, like when you think of it in the movies or you go to the hibachi restaurant, like those big ones, but I don't remember what happened to that. I think we broke it, unfortunately. But shout out to the cast iron pan, okay? And the stainless steel pans. We're not using non-plastic, or we're trying our best to stay away from the not non-plastic, non-stick, because of the forever chemicals on non-stick pans. While my 3 dishes are cooking on the stove, I'm making some more peanut sauce. So again, shout out to the lady I mentioned earlier, the chef that makes food without oil-free. She has an oil-free cookbook, and she makes really good vegan dishes. She put me on this amazing peanut sauce. It goes really well with like the spring rolls or sushi, and this is a great way to use the end of the jar of the peanut butter when it's so sticky at the bottom that you can barely like pick it up. Then you add these ingredients into your peanut butter can and then add the hot water, mix it up, and it will create that sauce. So then you're reusing the container and then you're also making some new sauce. So I've switched up the recipe a few times from her cookbook, but the main ingredients are like the peanut butter. You need soy sauce. I use no soy sauce. You're also going to want some ginger. You're going to want some tahini. You're going to want some sesame seed oil. Again, she will be tagged, so I recommend going out to check her page and her cookbook. But then you mix it up and you get this creamy, delicious peanut butter goodness, and like, it's just, I'm obsessed. Oh, and you can add a little bit of honey or liquid sweetener as well to give it that like sweet and sour peanut butter taste. I know that sounds crazy, but it's so good. It's so good. And then we're going to add our boiling hot water, not too much to where you're watering it down, but also enough so that it still breaks down the peanut butter and makes it nice and smooth and creamy. This may take a hot minute of stirring to get that nice consistency and making sure that every peanut butter clump is nice and dissolved. I mean, unless you like crunchy peanut butter or peanut sauce, to each his own. You feel what I'm saying? So a quick overview of the 3 dishes that we were making. I also don't think I said any of the rest of the process for the cabbage soup, but you're just putting in the vegetable broth and a few other seasonings just to mix it up and let it boil and simmer. I thoroughly enjoyed making this week's meals, and as in this week, I mean 2 weeks ago when I made it. But it was really simple and straightforward, but also super nutrient dense and a good variety with our meals. This is just me doing the cleanup process. I hope your mama taught you to clean as you go. And this also allowed the food to sit for a little bit and cool down before I put it in the Tupperwares. And what you see, I had this plan to put the cabbage soup into this glass jar using that little blue thing. I forgot what it's called. But look at this. I look so crazy trying to put the cabbage through that little hole. Like, I really was not thinking. I don't know what I thought I was going to be doing with that. But that is just crazy that I thought that was going to work. But anyways, I just want to show you how slow I can be sometimes. So I wanted to pack the cabbage soup in the glass mason jar because one, I didn't have any other big containers. And two, JK, it's just one reason. So I wanted to pack as much as I could in one big jar and then distribute however much is left in the little jars. And sometimes if I make a big enough portion, I'll take one of the smaller containers for myself for lunch during the week. So that way I'm doing two birds with one stone. That's how this kind of cooking thing came up in the first place, because I was already meal planning for myself, and then they were like, hey, can you just add on to what you're already making? And I really enjoy cooking for other people. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but when I'm making for other people, I have to think about their needs and their taste buds and how to satisfy, you know, all of the food groups for them, making it colorful, making it, you know, nutrient dense. This stuff really gets me excited for my future career, thinking about becoming a private chef, because I really have the ability to provide meals for people, individuals, families, and be that person to give them or to guide them into the right direction when it comes to nutritional value. Okay, pause before I get into my inspirational shit. Look at me embarrassing myself. This is so funny to me because I really had to do a double take. Like, this doesn't really make sense. The curry is a smaller portion, so why am I putting the smaller portion in the bigger container? Like, girl, it takes a little bit of a thought process, which, you know, mine comes a little slower than normally. LMAO. Anyways, I will preach this until the day that I die. Everything that you do, everything that you feel, everything that your body goes through is because of what you put into your body, the food that you're eating. From the time that you wake up to the time that you go to sleep, everything is caused by food. I promise you. So don't let me get started on this rant. This video is obviously ending. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you comment below what you want to see for next week's video. Love y'all.